Today we continue our study in systematic theology. This is lesson number 5, part 1, the doctrine of divine preservation. Due to the nature of question number 1, we're going to save the introduction for question number 2. Question number 1, last question. Who created the universe? With all the differing beliefs being taught, spread, and accepted as fact, we're going to rephrase this question so that we can uncover the truth and get to the bottom of what is really behind what public education is teaching our youth today. How did the universe come about? This is not just a foundational question. It is the foundational question. Every religious belief hangs on the answer to this question. Because if we are wrong about this, and I say this fully respectfully, Jesus wasted his time dying on the cross. If creation is true, science will support it. If there is a conflict between science and the Bible, then we must see where the evidence falls and accept the outcome. And to be fair, we cannot slant our findings to fit our purpose. That's what evolutionists do. We will make reference to both creationists and evolutionists, see how and why they reach their conclusions, and we'll see where that takes us. If we are beginning with a foundational question, let's begin by looking at the foundations of creationism and evolution. There are 5 things to consider to form a basis for how the universe came into being. Who or what was responsible? How was it created or formed? When was it created or formed? How long did it take to create or form? And how do we figure in? Evolution is kind of the visiting team, so we're going to give them first steps. The evolutionary answer to this question, what was responsible? In the beginning, there was nothing, and for some undetermined amount of time, nothing happened to this nothing. Until at some point in time, for some unapparent reason, nothing exploded and became everything. Admittedly, sounds a little silly. However, if you science this up, this is commonly called the Big Bang. According to Wikipedia, the Big Bang theory is the prevailing cosmological model for the universe from the earliest known periods to its subsequent large-scale evolution. The model describes how the universe expanded from a very high density and high temperature state and offers a comprehensive explanation for a broad range phenomena, including the abundance of light elements, the cosmic microwave background, large-scale structure, and Hubble's law. If the known laws of physics are extrapolated to the highest density regime, the result is a singularity which is typically associated with the Big Bang. Detailed measurements of the expansion rate of the universe place this moment at approximately 13.8 billion years ago, which is considered the age of the universe. Now, when you can never prove a theory or never want to have a philosophy debunked, you create a science that can adapt and evolve with the advances of pure sciences. One such science is theoretical physics. By definition, it is a branch of physics that employs mathematical models and abstractions of physical objects and systems to rationalize, explain, and predict natural phenomena. Professors love it because even if nothing they do is ever proven, they can still get published and keep their jobs. Their research is still a work in progress, and the phrase, "I don't know," is acceptable for a lifetime because research hasn't caught up with the answer they're giving. That's their story, and they are sticking to it. So what was responsible? The Big Bang. Question number 2. How was the universe formed? Matter must exist before it can expand, and this is the first problem facing those who want to believe the hyperbole. For this, we turn to some of their experts. Paul Charles William Davies is an English physicist as well as a professor at Arizona State University. He is affiliated with the Institute for Quantum Studies at Chapman University in California. His previous academic appointments at the University of Cambridge, University College London, and University of Newcastle, among others. He's an evolutionist, and in his book, The Edge of Infinity, he writes, "It represents the instantaneous suspension of physical laws." Starting off on good ground there. The sudden abrupt flash of lawlessness that allowed something to come out of nothing. It represents a true miracle. Evolutionists do not like the word miracle because miracle speaks of supernatural, and according to the evolutionists, everything is going to have a natural origin. But when they don't have another word to fit their science, they borrow one from us. Joseph Ivor Silk is a British astrophysicist. He was a civilian chair of astronomy at the University of Oxford from 1999 to September 2011. He was educated at Tottenham County School, went on to study mathematics at the University of Cambridge. He gained his PhD in astronomy from Harvard in 1968. Also an evolutionist. In his book, The Big Bang, he said, "It is only fair to say that we still have a theory without a beginning." These are, by the way, not quotes that you're going to find in student textbooks. Sten Felix Odenwald is an American astronomer, author, and NASA scientist educator. He's worked as part of the NASA Cosmic Background Explorer Diffuse Infrared Background Experiment, investigating the cosmic infrared background. Concerning the Big Bang, he said in the Astronomy Cafe 1998 version, page 220, "I was happy to announce that astronomers have not the slightest evidence for the supposed quantum production of the universe out of a primordial nothingness." Now, these are learned men, some of whom know that they can't explain how the universe began because the laws of science disprove their beliefs. So why do they still believe it, especially when proven science disproves it? Duane Talbert Gish was an American biochemist and a prominent member of the creationist movement. A young Earth creationist, Gish was a former vice president of the Institute for Creation Research and the author of numerous publications about creation science. Gish was called creationism's T.H. Huxley for the way he relished the confrontations of formal debates with prominent evolutionary biologists, usually held on university campuses. Based on the Big Bang Theory, he says, cosmologists predicted that the distribution of matter throughout the universe would be homogeneous. Thus, based upon the so-called cosmological principle, it was postulated that the distribution of galaxies in the universe would be essentially uniform. No matter in what direction one looked, if one looked far enough, one would see the same number of galaxies. There would be no large-scale clusters of galaxies or great voids in space. Recent research, however, has revealed massive superclusters of galaxies and vast voids in space. We exist in a very clumpy universe. The present crisis in Big Bang cosmologies began in 1986 when R. Brent Tully of the University of Hawaii published in the Astrophysics Journal issue 303, pages 25 through 38, that there were ribbons of superclusters of galaxies 300 million light years long and 100 million light years thick, stretching out about 1 billion light years, and separated by voids about 300 million light years across. These structures are much too big for the Big Bang theory to produce. At the speeds at which galaxies are supposed to be moving, it would require 80 billion years to create such a huge complex. But the age of the universe is supposed to be somewhere between 10 and 20 billion years. So how was it formed? From non-conformable, unexplained, undetermined, yet somehow acceptable, pre-existing matter. When was it formed? The Planck collaboration in 2015 published the estimate of 13.799 plus or minus 21,000 billion years ago. This is the starting point for the Big Bang. From Wikipedia, the metric expansion of space is estimated to have begun 13.8 billion years ago. Time since the Big Bang is also known as cosmic time. We are in the third of 4 phases. Phase 1, the very early universe from the Planck epoch until the cosmic inflation, or the first picosecond of cosmic time. By the way, that's 1/1,000,000,000th of a second. This period is the domain of active theoretical research, currently beyond the grasp of experiments in particle physics. So the very early universe lasted 1/1,000,000,000th of a second. I don't know who had that stopwatch, but their finger had better be quick. The early universe, or the first 380,000 years of cosmic time, when the familiar forces and elementary particles have emerged, but the universe remains in the state of a plasma, followed by the Dark Ages from 380,000 years to about 150 million years, during which the universe was transparent, but no large-scale structures had yet formed. Large-scale structural formations, the period of large-scale structural formation, including stellar evolution, galaxy formation and evolution, they love that word, and the formation of galaxy clusters and superclusters from about 150 million years to present, and prospectively until about 100 billion years of cosmic time. The thin disk of our galaxy began to form about 5 billion years. The solar system formed about 4.6 billion years ago, and the earliest traces of life on Earth emerging at about 3.5 billion years ago. So when was it formed? 13.8 billion years ago. How long did it take to form? The Big Bang is still in progress, according to the evolutionists. Opinions differ on how it ends. This is the fourth phase, the one we haven't got to yet. The stelliferous era will end as stars eventually die and fewer are born to replace them, leading to a darkening universe. Various theories suggest a number of subsequent possibilities. Assuming proton decay, matter may eventually evaporate into a dark era, known as heat death. Alternatively, the universe may collapse in a big crunch. Alternative suggestions include a false vacuum catastrophe or a big rip as possible ends to the universe. I kind of like the big crunch. It sounds pretty tasty. So how long did it take to form? Big Bang is still a self-perpetuating action. It is going on even now. How do we figure in? Clinton Richard Dawkins is an English ethologist, evolutionary biologist, and author. He is an emeritus fellow of New College, Oxford, and was the University of Oxford's professor for public understanding of science from 1995 until 2008. Dawkins has been awarded many prestigious academic and writing awards. He makes regular television, radio, and internet appearances, predominantly discussing his books, his atheism, and his ideas and opinions as a public intellectual. Their words, not mine. With his book, The Extended Phenotype, from 1982, he introduced into evolutionary biology the influential concept that the phenotypical effects of a gene are not necessarily limited to the organism's body, but can stretch far into the environment. In a book written in 2007 called The Dawkins Delusion, Dawkins is quoted as saying, "Humans have always wondered about the meaning of life. Life has no higher purpose than to perpetuate the survival of DNA. Life has no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference." So how do we figure in? We don't. We are a byproduct of natural occurrences. This is what evolution says. The Big Bang occurred from pre-existing matter 13.8 billion years ago, still going on, and we are nothing. Now we'll go to the home team. Creation's answer to the following. Who is responsible? Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Answer, simply enough, God. How was it created? Genesis 1:3 says, "And God said, let there be light, and there was light." Verses 14 and 15, "And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God spoke everything into existence. When was it created? Dr. D. Russell Humphreys was born on February 2nd, 1942 in Michigan. Was raised in a scientifically aware but non-Christian household. By the way, he's the gentleman on the left in the picture. Not surprisingly, Russell himself always had a love for science. And in 1959, he was one of the 40 winners of the Westinghouse National Science Talent Search. He received a BS degree in physics at Duke University. After this, he moved to Louisiana State University to study postgraduate physics. In 1969, while doing his dissertation research for LSU in the mountains of Colorado, he committed his life to Christ. In 1972, he was awarded a PhD in physics on cosmic rays and ultraviolet energy nucleon-nucleon interactions, by which time he was a fully convinced creationist due to both biblical and scientific evidence. Now, the good doctors published a list of 14 infallible truths that occur in nature that scientifically show that we live in a young earth inside a young universe. I'm not going to put any of the sources up here because they're basically all from Dr. Humphreys. However, feel free to fact check this to your heart's content. Galaxies wind themselves up too fast. There are too few supernova remnants. Comets disintegrate too quickly. There's not enough mud on the seafloor. There's not enough sodium in the sea. The Earth's magnetic field is decaying too fast. Many strata are too tightly bent. Biological material decays too fast. Fossil radioactivity shortens geological ages to a few years. Too much helium in minerals. Too much carbon-14 in deep geologic strata. Not enough Stone Age skeletons. Agriculture is too recent, and recorded history is way too short. So when was it created? At the beginning of time, approximately 6,000 years ago. How long did it take to create? Exodus chapter 20, verse 11. This is the Lord speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So how long did it take to create? 6 literal days. How do we figure in? Let's go back to Dr. Humphreys. He says in his article published in the Journal of Creation in August 2002, pages 95 to 104, that over the last few decades, new evidence has surfaced that restores man to a central place in God's universe. Astronomers have confirmed that the numerical values of galaxy redshifts are quantized, tending to fall into distinct groups. According to Hubble's law, redshifts are proportional to the distances of the galaxies from us. Then it would be the distances themselves that fall into groups. That would mean the galaxies tend to be grouped into conceptual spherical shells concentric around our home galaxy, the Milky Way. The shells turn out to be on the order of 1 million light years apart. The groups of redshifts would be distinct from each other only if our viewing location is less than 1 million light years from the center of the universe. The odds for the Earth having such a unique position in the cosmos by accident are less than 1 in a trillion. Since Big Bang theorists presume the cosmos has naturalistic origins and cannot have a unique center, they have sought other explanations without notable success so far. Thus, redshift quantization is evidence against the Big Bang. So how do we figure in? We are the centerpiece and the focal point of creation. There's a major movement among liberal churches that's begun to make its way into the more fundamental congregations, and this is a dangerous one. The belief is that evolution can be supported by the Bible by, you guessed it, reinterpreting the Bible. So let's do some comparisons. One of the first things that comes out, and I've heard this 15 years ago from a gentleman who was visiting our church, something they call the gap theory, which is an occurrence which supposedly happens between the first 2 verses of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void. But if you look at verse 2 in Hebrew, you find out the first word there is uiarts, which is 3 words in English, and the earth. It could consequently mean but the earth, because the and the but conjunction, which is the letter vav at the beginning of a word, is the same letter. But it speaks of a continuance of action. That is why in English, Genesis 1, starting verse 2, down to the end of it, all begin with the word and, a continuance of action. There is no gap. Looking here at the screen, if you notice on the left, evolution, look on the right, creation, starting at the top, Big Bang, physical event, on the right, spiritual entity. How? Scientific phrase I think is, They don't know. On the right, literal speaking, we know. When? 13.8 billion years. That's a number that if you say you can conceive 13 billion years, literally conceive it, then you're either deluded or lying. 13.8 billion years, we can't compare that time to anything. 6,000 years, we can grasp that. Continuing now, and a lot of people will say, well, we look up and we've seen stars be born. No, you haven't. The Milky Way is a galaxy that is revolving. As it revolves and rotates, the nebula that are in it start to thin out with this process. So once in a while, a star that was hidden by a nebula, as the nebula thins out, the star is now visible behind. Star's always been there. God finished creation at the end of 6 days. He rested on the seventh. Everything was complete. Nothing has been added since. Humans are inconsequential versus humans are everything. If you look, everything on the left is totally contradictory with everything on the right. There is no coexistence. If creationism or the Bible has a concrete foundation and evolution is at best built upon constantly shifting sands, why is it being pushed so hard? George David Wald was an American scientist who was best known for his work with pigments in the retina. He won a share of the 1967 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. On evolution, he said the reasonable view was to believe in spontaneous generation. The only alternative, to believe in a single primary act of supernatural creation. There is no third position. For this reason, many scientists a century ago chose to regard the belief in spontaneous generation as a philosophical necessity. And he continues, it is a symptom of the philosophical poverty of our time that this necessity is no longer appreciated. Most modern biologists, having reviewed with satisfaction the downfall of spontaneous generation hypothesis, yet unwilling to accept the alternative belief in special creation, are left with nothing. See, evolution is the religion of atheists. It is the desire to remove God from the picture, to tell God we don't need him. The first half of Psalm 14:1 tells everything that we need to know about atheists. It's repeated again in Psalm 53:1. The beginning of it, Amar Noval Belio Ein Elohim. The fool said in his heart, no God. Now in King James, in italics, you'll see the phrase there is added to make it more readable. Imagine yourself at a big fancy party, a cotillion if you wish. The food is fantastic. The conversation is witty. The host and hostess, splendid. You're enjoying yourself. The food is so good that you've actually decided to put off your diet for a day and you just stuffed yourself. And then the hostess brings out dessert. Now some people like my wife or 12-year-olds, if the dessert is chocolate ice cream, will still find room for it. I don't know how, but that's how she is. And yes, I love my wife. But for the majority of us at that point, you have to say no dessert. You are not denying the existence of the dessert. You are denying the desire for the dessert. This is what atheism is. It is not the denying of the existence of God. If you go into the deepest heart of the deepest jungle and find a tribe there, you will see that they are worshiping something because God instilled with us the desire to worship. Atheism loves evolution because it helps them support their we don't need God even for us being here. That is what that is all about. Now, can we prove the Bible? Well, biblical prophecies are scattered throughout the ages. We're going to look at some of the ones that are confirmable in secular history. 4 world empires, covered in Daniel chapter 2. This was Nebuchadnezzar's dream. The head was of gold. The chest and the arms were silver. And it's amazing that if you didn't believe in God, it's amazing the fact that this part was silver. Because when the Babylonian Empire fell, it was replaced by the Median-Persian Empire, the Medes and the Persians, one for each arm. That was followed by the bronze belly, which was Greece. And then the iron legs, the 2 seats of the Roman Empire, one in Rome, the other in Byzantium, properly prophesied. The destruction of Babylon by the Medes in Isaiah chapter 13. And if you read deeper into Isaiah, the name of the man behind it is given, Cyrus, 150 years before the event, which means obviously Cyrus hadn't been born yet. Yet God moved upon Isaiah and gave him that name. And the history books can confirm that. The destruction of the third Jewish temple, given in Matthew chapter 24. And of course, history records what happened in AD 70 with Titus the general. There are many more prophecies concerning Jesus and other things that the reason we're not touching them here is we're going to do the ones that the evolutionists can confirm. These and many other prophecies prove the Bible. Now, can we prove the Big Bang? Actually, science does just the opposite. No science real or theoretical, can rationalize that first picosecond, and the evolutionists admit that. The non-homogeneous layout of the universe denies the Big Bang. The age of the Earth denies the Big Bang. The decaying lunar orbit of the moon denies the Big Bang. The Big Bang is a big dud. So where does that leave us? Well, to sum up what George Wald said, we have two choices: spontaneous generation or creation. And to disprove one is to confirm the other. Let's now return to our original question. Who created the universe? Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. God the Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord, spoke everything into existence.